Hi, my name is Lauren,
And my name is Kirsten.
and welcome to the Accessibility Podcast, where we spill the tea on disability. We are so excited to film this podcast for you guys. This has been something that has been in the works for 3 years, probably. We've been diagnosed for a while. We'll get into that later. But we just wanted to create a safe space for people with disabilities to be able to hear about our journey and our story, and we're just so excited.
We also want to feature other disabilities and health conditions to get the word out there and to raise awareness for different conditions.
So I thought that we could start today talking about our diagnosis story. That's the beginning of both of our journeys with FA. So whenever I was 18 years old, I'm 25 now, so I've been diagnosed with FA for about 8 years now. I went to a normal doctor's appointment, and I remember jumping down from the chair, and my doctor asked if that was normal, if I normally stumble like that. I didn't think anything of it, and he wanted to look more into it. A couple weeks went by, and I went on a senior trip with my friends, and every time the boat was rocking, I would wobble a lot more than anyone else in my friend group. And one of the moms, her best friend has MS, and so she was thinking that I probably had MS or some kind of neuromuscular disorder. And this was my first time with any experience with anything disability related. Kirsten and I both did cheerleading growing up, so we were fairly active. And so, yeah, I remember just going to the doctor's appointment afterwards, after the cruise, and the mom had concerns about me. And she told my friend, she was like, if you're a good friend of Lauren, you'll make sure she gets a checkup. She really looks into this when she gets back. So did another doctor's appointment, and he did a balance test on me, and I fell over immediately. He had me cross both arms and then look up and close my eyes and fell over immediately. And so then he ordered 2 brain MRIs and 2 spine MRIs. And this is a really scary time, not only for me, but the whole family. Kirsten, do you remember whenever I went to this checkup and then my mom and I telling you what happened? What were your thoughts?
Are you talking about the checkup in Houston or when you were still in Tulsa?
This was when we were still in Tulsa with my pediatrician.
So this was during the summer, and Mom was like, something's wrong.
Yeah.
The whole family thought my mom was being dramatic. I remember she had no idea what was causing this. So she went down a rabbit hole of, oh, this could be from mosquitoes. And it was summertime. We wanted to lay out at the pool, and Mom wouldn't let you lay out at the pool.
Yeah, she thought it was the West Nile virus, by the way.
Yeah, I remember Mom just kept trying to make all these appointments, and we were just getting no answers.
Yeah. And it was really frustrating, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners can relate to this. I feel like the most frustrating part of having a disability or a health condition is just the waiting period and just not knowing what's going on, not having an answer, not having a diagnosis. And after this checkup, everything came back normal on the brain scans and the spine scans. So we could rule out MS. I didn't have any lesions. We could rule out, they were thinking maybe brain cancer. There was a tumor pressing up my spine. We could rule that out as well. So all the tests came back normal, but all the symptoms were still there. So I was just praying for a diagnosis, which sounds weird because obviously FA is as devastating as some diagnoses come.
At the time, so my sister and I were in high school. I was 16, my sister was 18. And at the time, I was a varsity cheerleader. I could do backflips. I was a flyer, so I would get put in the air and balance on one leg. I practiced every morning at 7 a.m. before school and after school. I didn't pay a ton of attention to it, but when I noticed something was going on with my sister and she was doing these balance tests, I just watched her and I tried the same test on me where I closed my eyes and I started swaying. And I told my parents, the test you're doing on her, I struggle with the same thing. And my parents were like, you are being dramatic. You are trying to get attention. I was a cheerleader. I loved to dance. I did love attention. And they just thought like I was trying to steal the spotlight. And they were like, this is probably something serious. You probably don't have it too. And I really tried to look back and I was like, I haven't gotten better with cheering. I didn't develop any new skills since I had in middle school. And practicing twice a day, you would think I would get better, but I was actually getting worse balancing when they would put me on one leg in the air.
So I think like Kirsten and I could both tell something was seriously wrong. We just didn't have a lot of answers at this time. And it wasn't until we finally got into a neurologist in Houston, he was the one that was able to diagnose me. And I remember the moment that we finally found something was when he took a safety pin down my leg and he was just slowly pricking at my leg and he was like, do you feel that? Do you feel that? Do you feel that? And I was like, yes, no. And I was like, wait, no, like I don't, that's numb in that area. And I think it was the first moment that not only I knew, but I think the family knew, like, it's this eureka moment followed by devastation. I remember my mom getting up out of the room and she went into the hallway and was crying. And we immediately did a nerve conduction test afterwards. And I remember kind of joking around with the nurse while we were doing the test. And then once the test started, I could see her demeanor shifted. And I was, did you find something? What's wrong? And she was like, the doctor will go over the results with you. And that's how I knew. I was like, oh, like they found something. I think it's probably, they were thinking it was Friedrich's ataxia.
Now, did they say those words to you or did they keep it from you, from freaking you out?
So I remember he was like, I think it's some kind of ataxia. And at the time I was like, what is that?
Have you ever had heard that
I
word?
hadn't. And I was like, could you at least say something that's easier to pronounce? Or something that at least has more awareness. What is Friedreich's ataxia? And we both struggle with our speech, as you guys can probably tell. Why would they name it Friedreich's ataxia if we already struggle to say it? So a lot of us say FA for short. So if you hear us refer to FA, that's more common terminology, just like multiple sclerosis, people say MS. So yeah, I remember hearing the word ataxia, and he was thinking it was either cerebral ataxia or I can't remember the other one, but
SCA?
maybe.
He didn't think it was Friedrich?
He was saying, let's hope it's not Friedrich's. And I remember that because he was like, it's lifelong, it's chronic, and there's no cure. And so I think I was hoping it was not going to be FA.
And it's progressive.
And
some of the other ataxias are not.
Exactly. And I remember my dad, he told me he was just praying that he didn't hear the acronym ALS. And so he was just happy it was something different. We end up finding out ALS and FA are pretty similar diagnoses, but FA just progresses a lot slower.
And you onset when you're a lot younger than ALS.
Yeah.
But it affects the body in a similar way.
Yeah. And so I think that nerve conduction test gave me a positive diagnosis. They confirmed it about a month later with blood test. Now we're all in the room together, and the neurologist informs us this is a genetic disorder. And I'm sure you can probably speak to the relief, and I told you so whenever you heard that.
So after that appointment, Mom, Dad came home and sat me down, and they said, "You were right. What Lauren has, there is a chance you could have it."
Yeah.
But they would not tell me the name of it. They did not want me to research it and freak myself out. So Dad said there is a way that we might be able to figure out if you have it right now. Most people with Friedreich's ataxia do not have reflexes in their knees. So Dad said, "I'm going to try something with you." And he tested my reflexes, and I did not kick back. And I saw the look at his face, and I just knew I had it. So we went and got my blood drawn, and I had to wait 2 weeks for the test. And I remember going back to cheer, and I was just very quiet. I don't know how to describe the feeling. It's like the world's moving around you, but all you hear is like white noise. It just didn't seem real. And I remember, if your parents have the gene, you have a 25% chance of having FA. And I kept looking out the window on the way to a football game we were cheering at, and I kept seeing the speed limit sign that said like 25 miles per hour, and I just saw 25% chance. It was like anything reminded me of FA.
You saw like the numbers everywhere.
Yeah, it was like that's all I could think of. And yeah, my blood came back positive, but my parents found out before me because they checked my chart, and it was Halloween weekend. So my parents let me have fun with my friends and go trick-or-treating. I don't know if we went at 16, but we were dressing up and celebrating Halloween. And knowing me, I probably would have found candy. But yeah, so my parents ended up telling me on Sunday night on a weekend and said, "You're going to fly to Florida in the morning for a clinical trial and you have FA." And I was like, "Okay, what is FA? What is a clinical trial?" I remember Googling it, and I freaked out. I was bawling. It was the scariest thing. The internet makes it look a lot scarier than it is. It says that the life expectancy is 40, and it comes with heart problems. And I saw videos of people's speeches. Mind you, at the time, I'm a varsity cheerleader. I can do backflips. I wasn't experiencing symptoms unless I really looked back. But I didn't think anything was wrong. And then I found out that my life was about to change.
I remember whenever I got my positive result, I was actually in college at this time. I was in my first semester of freshman year, and I was sitting in my dorm room, and it was on September 27th, 2018. And I remember just sitting in my room, and I see my chart message pop up on my email, and it said Friedreich's ataxia test results. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is literally, once I click this button, it's going to change my life. And so before I clicked the button, I did call my dad. And I was like, I want you to be on the phone with me when I find out about these results. I feel like I just shouldn't read them by myself. And I was like, do you want to put Mom on the phone? And he went and asked my mom, and she actually was not ready to receive the answer. And so she was not on the phone call with us, which It's probably a very real thing that families struggle with, of wanting to live in denial or wanting to just not really come to terms with what's in front of them. And I think, as difficult as it's been for us to going through it, we have amazing parents that have been able to help us every step of the way. And so I'm sure at some point we'll get their perspective on as well on the diagnosis story. But yeah, it was just my dad and me on the phone, and I open it up and I see Lauren Riggs is positive for juvenile onset Friedreich's ataxia. And then it was showing all the repeats and all these numbers and things I did not understand. And I think it felt very isolating because Kirsten wasn't diagnosed yet. And I did not know a single person in the whole world with FA. I also didn't really look it up because I was fearful of just seeing what would come before me and seeing what would happen to my body and just wanting to experience it for myself without seeing what had happened to others. And yeah, it felt very isolating. I didn't know a single person in the world with FA. It's a very rare disorder. I think there's only 15,000 people in the whole world with FA. And so I just kept to myself that month in my sorority and in college, just focusing on my studies. And I remember I went on a retreat for my sorority, and we had a fireside chat. So, like, everyone in the sorority stands up and talks about something that is going on in their life or something in their background that's important. It's like a bonding moment for everyone in the sorority. And I remember standing up, and I was like, I was just diagnosed with something really rare. Obviously, I appear very able-bodied right now, but I'm about to lose all physicality slowly. And I'm scared to see what my body's gonna turn into. I'm scared mentally to deal with this illness. And I was just talking about all these things I was feeling. And I remember looking out into my sorority, and my friend Summer Thompson, she was like bawling her eyes out. And obviously I was like touched by her reaction, but her severity of the reaction, I was confused because I was like, this is so rare. Like, how do you know?
What's your tie
Yeah.
to it?
And she was like, Lauren, you're not going to believe this. My friend Michael Gare was diagnosed with the same illness, and he raises money for FA every single year. He is very into musicals and theater, and he does these Cure FA soirees and raises money every year. And I was like, oh my goodness, I have to talk with him. I have to get connected with him. And so I will always thank her so much for that moment, because it took me from being the most isolated, lonely person in the world to all of a sudden, like, I think I got on a Zoom call with him and other FAers within a week, and we're all talking about, guys, does this happen to your legs? Or, guys, does this happen to your voice? And just having that community is something I'll always be grateful for. So yeah, I'm really glad that she connected us.
When I found out I was diagnosed, kind of didn't tell a lot of people, but I wanted to tell my cheer squad because I was just numb and they're around me every day and I just wasn't really interacting with everyone. So I came into practice and I was crying. It was right when I got back from the clinical trial. And everyone was like, what happened? What's wrong? And I'm like, I'll tell you later. And I walked straight up to my coaches, and mom came with me to practice that morning. And I sat in the room with my coaches and I said, there's something serious that I just got diagnosed with, and told them it was Friedreich's ataxia. And they were crying and they were like, do you want to tell everyone together? And I was like, yeah. So then they gathered the whole cheer team.
Mm.
And mind you, we're high school cheerleaders. There's drama. Like, I had some haters in the group. And that's nerve-wracking. Hey, haters, I have a disease. They started crying, and they were like, anything we can do, just let us know. And so I was like, let's go ahead and tell everyone together. So, because I knew there was the clinical trial, and I might be out of school trying to do experimental treatment. And so they gathered the cheer team, and I told them I had a serious condition called Friedreich's ataxia. It's progressive, and I'm going to start losing my ability to walk, and it's going to get harder for me to cheer. So this will probably be my last year cheering. And everyone is just crying, and big group hug, and everyone was really supportive, which my high school was a very competitive high school cheer team. You had to have a standing backpack to get on the team. And they told me even if I couldn't do a back tag next year, I could still be on the team and almost like a team manager. And they just really wanted me to feel loved and a part of the community still. So that meant a lot to me. But I did not handle my diagnosis well at all. I was numb, and I didn't want to feel the emotions of being sad. And so I drank a lot of alcohol. It's a part of my testimony.
Yeah.
I did not deal with the diagnosis well at all. I didn't want anyone to talk to me about it. It was embarrassing for me to have a disability, and I just wanted to keep it a secret. I drank a lot of alcohol to become numb. I did not want to feel sad. I hid it from my parents, which my mom ended up finding out and then made me stop and got me over drinking. But it was very hard to get diagnosed with something so scary. And the internet makes it look a lot scarier than what it is, which now I know that each individual case is different, and that 40-year life expectancy came out of a textbook from a long time ago, which a neurologist who is very knowledgeable about FA told me that. At first, I didn't have a lot of answers. It was very scary. I did not get plugged into the community, which I am now, but I think that made it very isolating to isolate myself from the community.
I think it's also like Kirsten and I have almost flip-flopped. I feel like whenever I was first diagnosed, I was very plugged into the community, and I feel like I was in denial in a different way of if I plug myself into all of these things and I'm involved in all of these things, like I was doing so much in college to distract myself from it. I was really involved working with the Children's Hospital. I did a dance marathon in college where we would raise money for the Children's Hospital. I was still very involved in my sorority and just different leadership organizations. But although I really enjoyed those things, it also was not very great for my mental health either, because I was burning myself out trying to do everything under the sun, just trying to distract myself from what's going on. And so, yeah, I attended a lot of different fundraisers and FA events. We went to Ride Ataxia, and I remember that experience was positive and negative for the family. I would say, like, having people that also had the same disorder around you and talking about that was great. Having that support system was great.
They gave a lot of resources to help navigate things that we had no idea we even had to think about.
Yeah, but I think Kirsten and I were very able-bodied, walking into a room of people that had been dealing with the illness for years. And I think we were seeing what was ahead of us. And I think that is scary. If you've lived your whole life walking and running and dancing and cheering, and then all of a sudden you see a lot of people in wheelchairs and their speech is slurred, it's devastating because you know that's happening to you in the future. You just don't know when, and you don't know how long it's going to take for you to get there.
And I had just had my positive test 2 weeks before going to ride ataxia. I was not mentally ready, and it totally freaked me out because I was not symptomatic yet. And it's just seeing it, it was just really soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now I love going to all my FA events, and that's my biggest advice to newly diagnosed families. I always say it is totally up to you when you want to plug yourself into the community. The community is great. I wouldn't have the positive outlook and support I do now without it. I said, but in the beginning, it was super overwhelming. So just think about that. And sometimes I recommend maybe parents to go first without the child that has FA.
Yeah.
So the parent might know if this would be too much for their child right now, or maybe starting off with a phone call or a FaceTime with someone with the same diagnosis really could help.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Just get your foot in the door, but don't go all the way in at once. Because I think I went all the way at once, and I think that's why I've had more hesitancy to join events now more recent as of Kirsten. Kirsten is very plugged into the FA community, and I'm sure we'll talk more about her TikTok and all of her advocacy work that she's been doing for FA. And I think for me, I was in denial about what was happening until it started happening. And I would say I started progressing a lot more in the last 2 years. We both currently work remote, but I think once I started working my remote job, we have a saying in the FA community, if you move it, you're going to lose it. And I lost it. A lot of my physical ability is not where it used to be. And that's a hard thing, grieving the body that you used to be able to do everything in. You just went to bed a bunch of times, and then you wake up later and all of a sudden you can't do what you used to anymore. And the only thing that has changed is the passage of time. So that's a really hard thing to wrap your mind around. And I think also the nature of it being progressive is it does not end here. Most things in this life you can say it will get better. And FA is the one thing that it's just going to keep on getting worse. And that's the reality of it.
Unless they're secure. I like to tell myself that I will be okay and there will be a cure.
And so I think there's a lot of hope in that. And I think, of course, I hope and pray for a cure one day. But I think I'm very realistic about where I'm at now. And that feels like the healthiest thing for me. Because I think all those years when I was first diagnosed, I was holding on to hope for a cure. And then it hasn't happened yet within the last 8 years. And so I think that the last 2 years I've been grieving the devastation of, I thought I wasn't going to be in a wheelchair. I never thought it was going to happen to me. I just thought this miracle cure would come along, and it still hasn't. So I think that's something I'm working through at the moment. And I think that's why it's been difficult for me to attend these FA events, and I've shied away from it. But that's why I'm so excited that we're starting this podcast and kind of diving into some of the darker things about FA and some of the sad parts of it, because there's a lot of blessings and a lot of opportunities that have come from being diagnosed with the disability and being able to spread awareness for it. But that does not mean most days are easy. Most days are actually very hard.
But I do want to say, if you have been newly diagnosed with FA. I'm so sorry, but it is not the end of the world. I am still so happy. I would call myself a super happy person. I love life. I still have great friends that are so supportive with FA. I have a great family. I do fun things and I bring my walker and do them. And it makes life a lot sweeter to see the kindness in people when you have your walker and your friends just jump to get out of the car and you're trying to get up a curb, a stranger goes and helps your walker up. Like you get little like heartfelt moments having FA because you get to see the good in people all the time. But once I started using a mobility aid, people did not treat me differently, which I was shocked because I thought people would treat me differently. And I still feel super independent having a mobility aid. And it is not the end of the world. It is the beginning of learning how to navigate your life in a different way. But you can still find joy in things and still do things that you love to do, but adapt them to be able to do it in an accessible way for you.
Yeah, like FA will bring certain limitations to your life, but it doesn't mean that you can't find new things that you enjoy. And I think for me, there's a lot of new things I've gotten to discover hobby wise. Like Kirsten and I have talked about how we're both involved in cheerleading and dance. And I think a lot of our identity being young was wrapped up in being an athlete and just really finding community in that. And so I think that made being diagnosed with a neuromuscular condition even harder. And so recently I've gotten really plugged into gaming and I've gotten to stream on Twitch and I go live and I'm instantly connected with a bunch of my friends and I've found this brand new community that I never would have experienced if I wasn't diagnosed with FA. And so Kirsten was talking about your life isn't over, it just shifts. You just find new ways to find community. You find new ways to enjoy yourself. It might just look a little different.
I love to fish, and now I bring a chair when I fish and sit there and fish. And sometimes I'll go with my friends if it's going to be an area where there's a hill and I need to grab onto my friend. But I've been getting into new hobbies like reading, and I want to get a tricycle so I can still get exercise because, I used to walk as a stress reliever, but then I fell and then didn't want to walk anymore. So now I haven't been exercising. And the tricycle is in my Amazon cart. I'm like, do I want to spend $260 on it? But I think it would bring me a lot of joy. But there are a ton of things you can still do with FA. Also, we never really told people what FA was.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, FA is a neuromuscular disorder and it is progressive. Most people are diagnosed there's
With 5
different
and 15.
stages. Yeah. 5 and 15 is normally the age you're diagnosed. Kirsten and I were diagnosed a little bit later, which I think is why our progression has been a bit slower. But it affects all the muscles in your body, and it's different for every single person. Like, I have neuropathy in my feet, which is numbness, like in your extremities. Do you have neuropathy? And she has scoliosis, and I don't have scoliosis.
Voice cracks a lot. Does yours?
I think her speech is a little bit more affected. I think my mobility is more affected. Everyone is different. But yeah, it affects all the muscles in your body. And that's why it is life shortening because it affects the cardiac muscle in your heart. And so a lot of people develop cardiomyopathy, which is thickening of the heart. Everyone's different and everyone has a different diagnoses, but that's pretty much all of it. It affects your speech. And I think in later stages, your vision and hearing as well. Oh, and fatigue. We didn't even talk about that.
Yeah, I struggle with
Me
fatigue
too.
pretty bad, which I don't have cardiomyopathy. You don't either, do you? And I've talked to other people with FA. There's a theory that if you don't have cardiomyopathy, you don't have the fatigue. But I have endometriosis and painful bladder syndrome as well. So I don't know if those two other chronic illnesses could be a contributing factor to my fatigue. I remember in high school, I felt fatigue before I even got diagnosed.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember in cheerleading, after we would do our routines, I was so winded. And I remember, like, everyone else seemed like they could do the routine, like, 2 or 3 more times. I was, like, one and done. And it took all the energy for the whole practice. And I just had no idea. I just thought I was, like, I don't know, not working hard enough.
Conditioning was so hard for me. I would always be in the back running, and the coaches would get so mad at me and think I was out of shape. And actually, I remember running stairs in high school in cheer. We would run up and down the bleachers, and this is actually my first symptom. I totally forgot about this. I would run down, and it was getting hard for me to run down. I felt unsteady. I had to grab onto the railing. And it was freaking me out doing it. I felt unsafe. So I went up to my coach and I was like, I can't say like I feel unsteady on the steps. So I just said, my back hurts. I can't run stairs because of my back.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how to describe that, like my knees, and I just felt super unsteady going down the stairs. So that was actually a first sign. And then at the football games, all the cheerleaders would run out first before the football players ran out. And this girl used to make fun of me and said that I ran like a duck because I would arch my feet out a little bit and run.
Yeah, I remember people in high school thought I was drunk whenever I was at school because of the way I would walk. And obviously they didn't know at the time, but that's like very disheartening because I had a disability and I wasn't drunk.
Was this before like you noticed the
Yeah,
symptoms?
it was before I was diagnosed. And I remember people would make fun of the way I walked in heels or the way I would run. I remember at dance practice, we had to do 5-mile runs every day before our practice. And after the first mile, I was throwing up. And the coach was like, get back out there. And I had a very severe illness and just no one knew at the time. And so I couldn't advocate for myself. So I just had to keep running. And like with your back, I ended up telling her I had asthma. I had never been diagnosed with asthma in my life. And she was like, where's your inhaler? And I was like, I forgot it. And I knew I needed to advocate for myself, but I didn't have a diagnosis yet.
Yeah, because pushing yourself, it feels like you're going to pass out. I remember at competitive cheer when I was at Twist and Shout, that conditioning was hardcore. And I kept saying, I'm going to throw up. He was like, go throw up then. And I was just like, you're mean. Which, like, I was really struggling, but the average person, it's not that hard for them. So I guess in my head, I'm like, this is really hard, but no one else understood it because people didn't have the FA body that we have.
I think that was the hardest part of just not knowing and then all of a sudden being diagnosed, and then now you have to tell all of these people that are not knowing that don't give you the benefit of the doubt, and then you have to give them the benefit of the doubt. There's been several times where we both have experiences going out with our friends of like not being served or not being let into the establishment because they assume that we're heavily intoxicated. And when we tell them, oh, we have Friedrich's ataxia, they're like, I don't know what that is. I've been told I'm a liability. I should know better than to want to go with my friends. And I think that's frustrating because I deserve to be treated like everyone else. Like, I want to have fun with my friends. I want to go out with my friends. So I shouldn't be told that I can't do that just because I have a disability.
I had a really bad experience with the bartender, which I'll share this story on a later podcast. But that perspective actually shifted my entire mindset from I don't want to talk about it, I don't want anyone to know about FA, to it was time to start advocating for myself because I had just went to a restaurant, walking around all day. I wanted to sit down and have a beer, and he was like, I just saw you stumbled to the bathroom, and he was rude. But it was the way he talked to me. I don't mind when bartenders and bouncers are like, hey, you appear drunk, like I can't serve you. I do look like a drunk person. It's fine. It's how they handle it. If I'm like, I have FA, I'll show you my diagnosis. No, I'll show you pictures of me with my mobility aid if I didn't bring one that night because my friends will hold on to me. It's how the person responds is like the biggest thing. And if someone treats you differently because you have it, that's when I'm just like, you know what? We need to start showing everyone that you can't treat people like that. You have to treat people like they're normal and with kindness because we are probably having a harder time than they are. And so it's like you need to treat us better, which everyone has their stuff. But I'm saying FA is really hard. And I'm very happy, but I definitely have my sad times. When I'm having a sad time, you're mean to me, it just makes me more angry.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I think that's a lesson I've had to learn through being diagnosed is having sympathy for people that don't know what FA is and just not jumping towards being harsh with them, but seeking to have understanding first and then educating later. But like Kirsten said, I think the most frustrating thing dealing with FA is not even the fatigue, it's not the muscle loss, it's not anything to do with the physicality of it. It's the treatment from other people that don't validate your disability and then just make things harder for you when you're already dealing with such a difficult diagnosis. And the thing is, we get it. We lived 18 years, 16 years being able-bodied. It's been a completely different perspective shift, and I'm sure that I respond to things differently than I do now. But we went from being completely able-bodied to now disabled. There's so many things that I've learned. Like, I probably never scanned a parking lot before to see how many handicap spots there were. I never looked at a building to see, okay, where's the ramp and where's the most accessible entrance. I've never had to look for a drop curb or see, okay, how can I make this more accessible for me? So I have to have patience for people that are just trying to seek to understand, but sometimes the delivery isn't great, and sometimes there isn't really an understanding to be gained from it. People are just not being kind. And that's when I don't have as much sympathy and I'm not as kind. And you just have to discern between the two. Is this genuine understanding, or is this person just not being kind and just being in their ways because they don't understand?
Maybe that would be a good topic for next week's episode is ableism and stories of how we've experienced ableism and ways to navigate them so we have a good response.
Yeah.
To educate people.
And we have a lot. We have a time we could go into. I'm curious for everyone listening, we would also like to hear your guys' stories about ableism and things that you guys have experienced. We could talk about them next week on the podcast.
I would love that. Yeah,
That'd be so-
also, we want to hear about your diagnosis story. So if you want to leave a comment of your diagnosis story, we would love to read it, and we would love to connect with the community. And if you have a different condition besides FA, please share as well, because we are all disabled. We're all in this.
We're all in this together.
We're all in this together, and we're all a community. Even if you have a different condition, we all experience
or
it.
even if you're a normie. If you're not disabled at
If
all,
you're a
we're happy
normal
you're
person,
here.
Yeah. Also, I mean, there's probably caregivers and friends of people with disabilities watching this.
And family.
Yeah,
And
if you're just in the community or want to be.
there's so many stories that we're excited to share with you guys. We're excited to have guests on the podcast. If any of you are interested spilling the tea on disability, we'd love to have you be a guest. But thank you guys for tuning in, and we're so excited to record another episode for y'all next week.
Make sure to like this podcast and follow us for next week's episode to keep listening.
Bye.
Bye.